This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And Doc, as you know, one of our fine partners at the DSP network is The Athletic. Premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. And listeners of this very episode of Two Bad Hombres can get 20% off. Yes, 20% off the first year of an annual subscription to The Athletic by visiting theathletic.com/DSP.
I was trying to get it how I live. I want them dead presidents. I wanna pull up, head spin, get it, get fly. I got 6 jobs, I don't get tired. I don't get tired. I don't get tired. I don't get tired. Get it, get fly. I got 6 jobs, I don't get tired.
And we're still not tired on this week's episode of Two Bad Hombres. I am your host, Vito Geronimo, alongside my usual broadcast partner and sidekick, and that is the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon. John, how are you doing, man?
Vito, someone's been a bad hombre this week.
Yes.
Special edition of the recording. Usually we record on a Tuesday. We're recording this podcast on a Thursday this week. Welcome to the weekend, everybody. I hope everybody's been enjoying the nice weather. Been a little bit rainy the last couple days, but in the world of Detroit sports, a bombshell was dropped on Wednesday evening. Unbelievable situation in which the Detroit Lions, the Detroit News came out and they did some research. I don't know how Robert Snell got the information, but it came out Wednesday evening, late 9:30ish or so. It dropped on the Detroit News website. And basically, court reporter Robert Snell did some research. He's also known for writing an unbelievable piece and a series regarding gangs in Detroit. If you haven't checked that out, oh my goodness. But in essence, he came out and what was revealed was pretty shocking. And for those that don't know, Matt Patricia, over 20 years ago, on spring break, very young, maybe got intoxicated, maybe was involved in an alleged sexual assault. And it was a situation in which the facts of the case were presented to a grand jury and he was indicted. But when it came down to have a trial, a court date was set. The young lady who was, supposed to go and discuss what happened did not show up, and then the matter was closed. And so this is a situation that's over 20 years old. He has worked in the NFL, has had several other opportunities to work, and this has never come up. All of a sudden, now on the verge of training camps and things like that, OTAs, this news drops, and everybody's like, whoa, there's so much to talk about in terms of, one, is this a story? People's reaction to it, the journalistic nature of it, what the Lions did know or did not know, what the NFL did or did not know, what the Patriots did or did not know, and people's reaction to Matt Patricia with these allegations. There's so much to talk about, and I'm fascinated, and you're the guy I want to talk to because you have a journalism degree. You are somebody that writes articles, you gather information, sometimes breaks news, and so I want to start with this. In terms of the journalistic credibility, one of the early things that people said when I put out the information, when Adam tweeted back and tweeted at Detroit Podcast, he said, look, this is interesting. I put it out there. People said, why is this news? This is yellow journalism. This is sensationalistic. This is clickbait. This is bullshit. This is stuff that does not even need to be printed. So step one, explain to me, is this a real story? Is this a journalistically credible story? Is this more than just clickbait after what you saw and read in the Detroit News?
I would say it's not a hit piece. It's not a click piece. It's not clickbait. And it's not like the news. Detroit News has an agenda against the Detroit Lions, out to get Matt Patricia and get him fired. This is something that allegedly happened, and now the news, Robert Snell of the Detroit News, is reporting it. And, could it cost Matt Patricia his job? And you know what? I think these people that are angry, are upset on Twitter, have tweeted back at us saying that it's yellow journalism, sensationalism, and salacious news that isn't newsworthy, isn't journalistically ethical and upright. Well, you know what? You know why they're tweeting at us? At Detroit Podcast on Twitter, because they're unhappy about Matt Patricia being under fire and maybe losing him as the Lions head coach, because it seemed like the Lions finally found their head man, right? The right head coach to lead them in the right direction, to maybe lead them to a Super Bowl. What? A Super Bowl, yeah, one day. But guess what? Now these people are upset because, if more and more comes out, they're really validates this report. Matt Patricia could easily lose his job, but I also date it back. I want to trace it back to when he got his first coaching gig in the NFL with the Patriots. They must have known something about this, and they look really bad right now, the Pats, allowing him to coach on their staff for all those years, doing nothing about it. And once again, the woman refused to testify, wasn't brought to trial, right? So because of all of that nature of the story, well, he got off the hook, but he was indicted, and it sounds like he did do something with a buddy from his college team, fraternity brothers, and it looks like Matt Patricia is in the wrong, and he has come out now and said, as of this recording, Doc, on Thursday, that the truth is on his side. I don't know if the truth is really on his side. I'm starting to doubt it more and more, and you have to believe this story is valid. A journalistically ethical and upright news publication like the Detroit News will not just fabricate a story and put a story out for clicks. It's not clickbait. It's not yellow journalism. It's not sensationalism. I think this is a real journalistically ethical story.
So the people that have reacted strongly to us, to the reporter, are those that are upset that Matt Patricia's name is going to be dragged through the mud. There's going to be some investigations on something that was well over 20 years old. But, you know, in the situation that people are exploring this and their reaction to it, a lot of people don't care. And
which
honestly,
is sad.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Because of the
it
fact...
happened. He raped a woman, probably.
No,
He probably. I didn't say he did. He probably did.
Why would you say probably? The evidence
in the story. It's in the story that he probably did.
Really? Is that what that I didn't come away
It's
from the
alleging sexual assault on the woman. The woman brought up charges and she was too scared to testify, which happens a lot when, you know, these women do get raped. I mean, I know this only because of Law and Order SVU. Seriously. So I'm no expert, but based on this story, I think he raped the woman along with his buddy. And think about it. Okay, here's another stance I want to take. And I don't know a ton of stuff, and it's not me totally being like a journalist here, but I look at it like, you know, when I'm theorizing, you know, stuff here. Well, I look at it this way. So this woman on South Padre Island back on spring break in 1996, she accused these two men, Matt Patricia and his buddy, a teammate of his in college. Okay, so, you know, a lot of women, like, you know, even in this Me Too movement, some guys will say, oh, well, this woman brought these accusations up against this man because he has money. That's why, like, Harvey Weinstein, like, he was protected for a long time, right? Because they just thought, oh, these are just, you know, salacious accusations just to get some money out of him. And some women did get paid by him, and they went away. You know, it's hush money. Matt Patricia had no money like that. Okay, he was nobody then. Remember that, too, right? And then it kind of, I mean, you don't want to just say, oh, he did it right away. But based on this story, you know, I think it's telling. I think it doesn't scream at me, but I think it says that he did something erroneously, Matt Patricia, and he never paid any consequences. There were no repercussions for his actions.
Okay,
That's what I'm getting from it, Doc.
See, I read something totally different. I looked at it as, you know, when Matt Patricia addressed the media, he was so emboldened, he was so passionate.
Yeah.
And he said that I did not do this. I did not have the opportunity to defend
so
myself.
So did Bill Cosby. He said he didn't do it. A lot of guys have said they didn't do it. So remember that, too.
But here's the thing. There was evidence in terms of information that was presented to the grand jury, but it doesn't take all that much because of the fact that there was no evidence presented from Matt Patricia. That's the part that's challenging, is that right now we're in a classic he said, she said situation.
Yeah.
And so for you to take that stance, I think is a little bit overstepping your bounds because you don't even have the facts of the entire case.
I said probably.
Yeah.
I didn't say he did.
No, but I would say that the stance
I'm saying you can't say he didn't do it. You can't say he didn't do it.
You can say that there's not enough evidence because I think the notion that everybody talks about is everybody is innocent in the court of law.
Correct.
Until you are proven guilty. So what you're saying is you're judging him as being guilty based upon your opinion. Factually speaking, and the rule of law, he's innocent. And that's the way I'm looking at it. And so
he's never been convicted of anything. Correct.
He's never been convicted.
But maybe if there was a trial. I'm saying maybe. This is
what
me
an
just
article.
saying,
Yeah, what an article made you say that you probably believe something happened?
Well, I read some of the stuff that the woman said. And it seems like she got scared off. And women do, men do, that go through that. It's a lot of trauma, right? Like the mental and physical pressures, the mental psyche is affected, is damaged forever. This woman right now might not even be the same because of this incident. And it could be where she made it up, Doc. She could have made it up.
Yes.
She could have. Correct. And you know what? He wasn't convicted of anything. But because there was no trial and because she was scared off. That's what I'm, trying to get at a little bit too. And I'm not trying to, say that he did something and is guilty either.
Right. I think what you're saying is there is some evidence that something happened.
Something
there
happened.
Is something
definitely happened.
And that was,
I really believe that.
That was the point in his presser that kind of concerned and alerted me was they asked him, were you in the bedroom? What happened that day? He just said, look, something happened. So my understanding would be...
Did he say it like that, by the way?
Yeah.
He said something happened?
No. No, let me clarify. They asked him, were you in the bedroom? What happened that night? And he just did not say yes or no, I was there. He just said, I've been expressing all along I'm innocent. Nothing happened. Nothing that took place was wrong. So he never denied knowing this woman. He never denied not being there. So what I'm speculating is that what happened was something happened consensually. He had sex.
I hope so. I hope so too.
Exactly.
For his sake, for the Lions' sake,
Exactly.
for this woman's sake.
Exactly.
Trust me.
Exactly. So that's what we're all hoping for, is that this is something that happened 20 years ago and it was consensual and nothing came of it legally. So legally he's innocent.
Correct.
Now, so your opinion for those that are angry is, they don't want the Lions to be attacked. They believe in the innocent until proven guilty.
Mm-hmm.
You believe it's journalistically valid.
It is. The story is. Correct.
What do you say to those that say, okay, now you have this situation where the Detroit Lions have kind of maybe did not do enough research? Or do you say, okay, knowing that this took place, should Matt Patricia have disclosed this when he really didn't have to, when in the end it amounts to legally nothing? The Patriots have come out and said they didn't know. Other people that interviewed them say they didn't know. Do you believe the Lions? And how bad do they look basically having the news tell them that this is something that went down? Because the way it played out was the news contacted Rod Wood. He's like, huh? I don't understand anything. And 2 hours later, 2 hours later, he comes back and is like, we totally believe Matt Patricia and everything that he said. So it comes off looking like you're just siding with your guy without doing your due diligence. That's why I feel like the Lions come across this situation looking way worse than Matt Patricia. The Lions did not do their due diligence, and now you got a PR nightmare because you just fired a guy in Jim Caldwell who was clean cut, the grandpa type figure, who was a guy that, while on the field, wasn't as successful as Lions fans would like in terms of ultimate success in the playoffs. He was clean cut, no problems. Now, 3 months on the job, and Matt Patricia has brought something to the table that has surfaced and caused a huge PR nightmare for the Detroit Lions. Because, something that people are saying, and when people are speculating, they're saying, look, this is a situation now where it's a ticking time bomb, because there is this woman out there who could be upset now, who could say, you know what, I'm now in my mid-40s, I'm going to speak on it. And you go, okay, what if, the Lions have success in early December, and this woman decides, okay, now I'm going to speak to, Channel 7, I'm going to go speak to ESPN. And now you have a situation that you have come out and supported this man, Matt Patricia, but the other side has yet to speak and has yet to maybe, be approached regarding her side. So if her side gets released, this is going to be a nasty situation.
Well, the Lions double down on their stance that they support Matt Patricia and that he's innocent. Really, they're saying he's innocent. And, okay, so once again, he never was convicted of anything. But I still think on the Lions' part, Rod Wood's part, it's tone deaf. It's a PR disaster on their hands that they have to deal with now. And the Lions thought they had their savior, their franchise savior. And now this bombshell occurs. And the news having to tell Rod Wood of this incident looks very bad on the Lions' part, not doing their due diligence. And once again, you brought up a very good part of this equation. If this woman now that, made these allegations against Matt Patricia and his teammate back in college in 1996 does come to fruition, if she becomes courageous and more confident now, maybe she is now in her later age, she comes out and presents these facts against Matt Patricia and the Lions, against him in this, specific case, what happens to Matt Patricia then? And that's kind of is that a ticking time bomb on the Lions' hands right now? Almost, do you get rid of him right now? And we're jumping to conclusions, but you get rid of him now to avoid that from piling in your face later on if this woman does, go to a news organization, to Channel 7, to the Detroit News, to the Detroit Free Press, to tell their story, let's say mid-season, and then it comes out that he did do this, maybe she will sound convincing and it is validated her claims that he did sexually assault her. Well, what happens then to Matt Patricia mid-season? What do the Lions do then? So they have this ticking time bomb perhaps on their hands too of, do you address this issue now? But you know what? The thing is they're not going to fire him, are they, Doc? It's just, what if this woman does come out and tell her side of the story to Channel 7, like you said, to the Detroit News, to the Detroit Free Press? How darn bad do the Lions look then, PR-wise? Really darn bad, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a situation in which you go, man, the Lions just can't enjoy nice things. No smooth waters with the Lions. And, you look at it and you say, well, this is kind of coming across as news to everybody. Okay, so Bob Quinn, the Lions, did not do their due diligence. And so this is, again, similar to what the Pistons are like, in that Tom Gores is relying on others to do the job. The Lions are relying on Bob Quinn to bring us somebody that he trusts. And he went and brought somebody that he trusted.
And he trusted him. This is a guy that he trusted from New England. And New England trusted him, too. That's what I always trace this back to now, looking at the story, because New England gave him his first shot at coaching.
Now, my opinion is this. It is a PR nightmare, but you got to fully support Matt Patricia until there is a preponderance of evidence that he did something wrong. Right now, you continue. I just think the mistake that Matt Patricia made was, I think in this situation, you have to have a little bit of insight. Not as a coordinator, but when you're the head guy, one job out of 32.
So you have disclosed this info to your employer, future employer.
Yes.
But he was, like you said, though, Doc, he wasn't convicted of anything.
No, that's why I think you should disclose it and just be like, Bob, look.
Okay, so if you were convicted, though, and they didn't know. I mean, they would know. But think about it. So if you're convicted, you tell them.
Yeah.
You tell them every single detail, though, too. I mean, either way, you tell them every single detail. So you would have told. So he wasn't convicted, once again.
Right.
You would have told every single detail to Rod Wood.
Exactly. Every single detail, and said that there was
I
something
don't know
in my
enough
past.
people are man enough to do that. Man or woman. If they're courageous enough to do that. When they're going for a job, an NFL head coaching gig,
And Vito,
how
I think
prestigious
now,
is that honor, too? Think about it. It's very prestigious.
Vito, you got to give your field ultimate credit in that in the world of journalism, people can find information. This was no just like ticket. I think what Matt Patricia and others now are realizing is it's better to be upfront than to have it released this way. And so for the Detroit Lions not to be able to gather this information, and a journalist was able to, Deadspin came out and said they found the information in like 30 seconds. So they were tipped off, and that's another...
So the Lions really could have found this out, and maybe did, but guess what? They're not going to disclose it. They're not going to disclose that they found out about it. If they hired Matt Patricia, once they did, they're not going to... And Matt Patricia wasn't, but he should have... Honestly, I think he should have disclosed it too. I'll say this. And it's hard to say that we would have done it in his situation, but I think he should have because of the fact now he looks... It's more damaging to his reputation now, Doc, because he didn't come out and tell the Lions that this incident happened. Right? It looks like he's guilty or that he did something, that something happened erroneously. I think because he didn't disclose this info to the Lions.
Yeah, that's something that people have debated back and forth, and they're saying, well, if it's no conviction, it's nothing. But for it to come out this way, I think what prominent people are going to recognize is the media will dig it up. They will find it.
Especially now.
Yes, in this day and age, whether you agree with it or not, this is the reality. Journalists can find that information, whether it be sources, it's public record.
Well, FOIA, yeah, you can look up records like this.
You
like
can
that's
look
been in
this
30 seconds. So the Lions can do that in 30 seconds?
Exactly.
And they did a criminal background check and nothing came up? Okay, because he wasn't a criminal ever, but this...
Right. So I do believe Matt Patricia
should
have came and been forthright and said this. I would have. In the end, when you know you are a prominent figure in the world of media, sports, things like that, this kind of stuff has to be looked at and things like that. But for me, I fully support Matt Patricia. I do hope and pray that he's telling the truth. I do hope and pray that in the grand scheme of things, even if he, you know what, in the grand scheme of things, if you just look at the presser, Vito, I kind of do believe that he's being adamant that nothing happened and that he does have a side and that he was somebody that believes it was consensual. Now, here's the part that has to be asked.
What does she believe, though, too, right?
And here's the part that has to be asked in terms of some more information, factual stuff. How much alcohol did Matt Patricia have? Because he can truly believe he did nothing wrong, but, a couple of tequilas, things like that. The only question I think that I want to know now, sitting here, is that night, how much alcohol did you have? Were you drunk? Because if he says yes, I was pretty much 2 sheets to the wind.
Well, he didn't know he might have raped her. Is what it comes out as. That's what it looks like.
No, there's an increased chance that, remember the words, that there was a sexual assault.
Yeah.
That encompasses, Vito, a wide range.
Yes.
It could be touching, could be grabbing, could be forcefully doing things. So there's a wide range there. And so in the absence of specifics, I'm not going to choose to use the word rape. I'm going to continue to use the words in the report, sexual assault. And so that's probably the information I need to know is what was his blood alcohol content, what did he consume, and what actually happened that day. And that's something that probably has been asked, because when you parade yourself in front of the media and you have 40 people asking you questions, television, newspapers, you can't go out there and you have the owner, the general manager, the president of the organization standing there behind you if you don't go out there in the hours beforehand. You go, exactly, tell us what happened, where were you, what did you do? The Lions know at this point in time what has happened, and you just hope that the version that Patricia gave, it's going to be investigated now by the league, and it's going to be investigated by others.
It's out there. The NFL will investigate this too further to see if something really did happen.
Exactly. So it's a scenario in which Matt Patricia and the Lions have a little bit of a mess on their hands. We'll see how this progresses going forward. But look, this is the common theme. Tony Stedry messages us at tsted19 on Twitter. Only the idiots in the big media care about allegations from 22 years ago. Would be different if there was a court case that actually went to trial. And our Twitter poll at Detroit Podcast, 85% of the supporters that voted are in support of Matt Patricia and the Lions. Only 15% want him fired right away. So I do believe that
you go on.
In terms of the reason why I asked, is it a really irrelevant story, is I'm going to read to you some replies that were sent to Robert Snell, and I'm going to look them up shortly. But the question I'm going to pose to you is, in this day and age, when you put out something this controversial, knowing the heated, vitriolic response you'll get online, let's say you came across this information and you got the research, and obviously a paper edited it, looked at it, and posted it. So knowing that this information was out there, and let's say it came to you, Vito, and you had an opportunity to write it, knowing the significant nastiness of what could come back to you, would you be willing to put your name on it and write it?
I'd be scared to. Now, this guy, Robert Snell, has more credibility in his defense, too. He's done some, big stories before. So he's a credible name for me, like doing this as my first big breaking story, groundbreaking, journalistically credible story, or, journalistically meaningful story. Well, I would have been scared to put my name on this without doing my due diligence, but you have to, as a journalistically ethical dude, as a reporter, a news reporter, you must vet all your sources, have all your facts, fact check every single source. Every single aspect of your story must be vetted, must be fact checked. So you must do that before you present any story to your editors, at the Detroit News, at the Detroit Free Press. If you don't do that, you're not doing your due diligence and you're not doing your job as a journalist. And really quick, I know we've already glanced past this, but you brought up the Twitter poll, so I wanted to, retrace ourselves back to that a little bit. And you know what? 85% you said support Matt Patricia right now. But once again, I think a lot of those Lions fans just don't want to see him be, actually guilty of these actions, right? Of these accusations. They don't want to believe it because they don't want him to lose his job. Because if, stuff comes out, more groundwork is done and, his name is dirtied further by this woman that, maybe she'll, bring her side of the equation and give valid reasons for why the accusations were legit about Matt Patricia and what he did on this, one day in 1996 to this woman on spring break. So, if stuff comes out more and more throughout this NFL investigation, which is ongoing now, I believe, well, Matt Patricia could lose his job. And I know a lot of fans, they're supporting him now, just don't want to see him lose his job because they believe he is the Lions savior, the guy that can lead this team to a Super Bowl appearance, to a Super Bowl trophy, title. And then, hosting the Lombardi Trophy maybe one day as an NFL franchise, which would be something for this team in this city at this point. So I think a lot of people are naysaying that anything happened because they don't want to see the Lions lose their man, lose a guy that might right the ship and lead the team to a Super Bowl. So I think a lot of people are supporting him and saying they have, they're fully supporting him and, they're backing him because of that. Because they don't want to see him lose his job because they believe this guy is the right guy to lead the Lions to the promised land.
Okay, so you would be scared, but you do believe that the Detroit News had a right to publish it, and I was surprised Robert Snell did not take the opportunity to come. We did invite him. I do believe he's a true journalist. His response back to us was, thank you for the invite, no problems, but I'm going to let the story speak for itself. He doesn't want to make himself part of the story. But I feel like an author like that who publishes something that controversial should have came in and maybe talked about it in terms of...
Well, if it's true, he doesn't have to talk about it further. He knows it's true. He's going to let the story speak for itself because he believes it's true. He knows it's true. More than likely. And once again, if you're a reporter for the Detroit News, for the Detroit Free Press, for any news entity, you better know that the story is true before you report it. And when it's this groundbreaking, such a big bombshell as it was when it broke Wednesday night before this recording, Doc, you better have all your facts straightened out. And I got to believe he did if he's reporting this story and the news did run with it and publish it ultimately on their website, in the newspaper, I believe Thursday morning. So it has run its course now. It has proven to be heavy-duty dialogue for a lot of talk radio, for podcasts like us. And you know what? I'm going to take what he has said in this story as fact. He's not going to just report it for the heck of it. And also, it was brought up really quick, Doc, that some people are not believing it because he was never convicted, right? Nothing ever happened to Matt Patricia. Well, you know what? How about Kevin Spacey? I mean, there's people now, celebrities, actors that have lost jobs, high-profile gigs. Like Kevin Spacey did something with this young boy 30 years ago or whatever, and it was a child, a 14-year-old or something, who is now an actor himself. Well, it came out that this happened with this boy when this guy was a boy. And Kevin Spacey lost his gig with House of Cards. He was a leading star of House of Cards. It's hugely successful Netflix show. And he lost his job even though this incident happened 25, 30, 35 years ago. So stuff that happened in your past does matter, and it can come back to haunt you. So I don't like the people that are using that line, too, to kind of validate that Matt Patricia is all clean, unscathed, and should continue to move forward as Lions head coach unscathed, despite maybe something else coming out in the future that might actually incriminate him, because something from this woman, or maybe more, something else from this report will develop. So it's hard to believe anybody at face value. And I think stuff that did happen 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it does matter. No matter how long ago it happened, it does matter if it did happen. And that's why it deserves being brought up. And there was nothing wrong with the news, with Robert Snell and the news running this story.
Okay, listen to some of this response. This is from, he tuned into the presser, Robert Snell, and he tweeted out, Patricia press conference, truth is on my side, a link to his article and things like that. And here's some of the replies. You are a fucking hack. You and your editor should be embarrassed. There's a reason Detroit News /media is constantly getting a bad rap. Want to know why? Go look in the mirror, you fuck. Hey, Snelly, can I wrap your fish with your garbage article? You should be ashamed. Hashtag Matt Patricia. And someone else replied, that's disrespect to the fish. Why report this? Not convicted, never recharged. What purpose does this article serve other than make 3 people relive something that happened over 20 years ago? Makes no sense other than to sell papers at other people's expense. Another, bingo. But in 2018, accusations are now evidence of guilt regardless of when it occurred. Ridiculous. Duke lacrosse case. Before you smear someone in an article that says nothing was proved, no one remembers, think about that case. It went much further than this one did, and it was a lie. You pretty much unleashed cancer on this man, his family, and his name under God. Being falsely accused is at least as bad as being the initial victim. She could have proceeded. Perjury will get you time, though. Karma is a bitch, my man.
Wait, so time out. Perjury for the woman?
Yeah, they're saying
that she would perjure herself because she's going to make up a story, fabricate this story.
And see, here's the thing that's delicate.
And that's horrible to say that about this woman, too.
This
woman, if it did happen, that's horrible to say that she would lie. She's not. You can't believe that somebody's lying, okay? Let me just say that, too.
Here's the part that's delicate, okay? And this is the reason why a lot of this gets muddy. Women sometimes are afraid of going through with speaking out on sexual assault.
Yeah, because, man.
Because, and I don't know if I talked with you or somebody else, the defense is going to portray you as a hoe, as a slut, as somebody who's promiscuous. The defense against sexual assault is so bad sometimes that women are left psychologically scarred as much or even more than the assault itself, so they don't do it. And that's unfortunately the reality, and that's what this Me Too movement is involved with, is letting women speak their truth, speak factually what happened, and not let these scenarios discourage women from speaking their truth and speaking what they believe happened. And unfortunately, there's the tough part, is that facts and he said, she said have to be disseminated, and we sometimes have to remove a little bit of emotion and just look factually. And so this is what the journalist is getting. And that's why I want to talk to him so badly. I want to say, look, you kind of could have expected this to happen.
Well, you have to deal with it. I bet he expected it. I don't think he cares. People in this field, Doc, let me tell you, like Drew Sharp, remember him and what he had to deal with? And I mean, these negative nillies are guys that write stories that are groundbreaking, are kind of, telling of somebody's character and, are reporting of incidents such as this of sexual assault, let's say. They have to deal with a lot of crap. Anybody that, reported Bill Cosby at first and all of his accusers and what he had done sexually assaulting them, when those allegations came out, when those stories first were written and broken, well, guess what? The reporters that broke those stories had to deal with a lot of crap on Twitter. Think about it. A lot of naysayers, a lot of people calling them names and some nasty names, uncalled for names. And this woman, being called a liar, a woman that would make up a story, let's give her the benefit of the doubt, too, that something did happen to her, physically and mentally tormenting, and her psyche wasn't right to testify at the time, right? To go forward with their story. And because the defense, as you said, the defense attorney and the defense team in these cases, guess what? They go hard after these women and try to make them look, well, filthy, right? Like hoes, you said, using that word. I don't like using that word, but they like making these women look like they're skanky and that they do engage in these acts and that they have no morals, right? That they have no character, no good character and higher moral ground. So guess what? It's a lot for the woman to endure through. Anybody that has to go through sexual assault or rape, let's say, not to throw out that word constantly here, but guess what? They have to go through the mental torment before the trial, let's say, if they go to trial with their case and testify. And then when they do testify, what they have to deal with, what the defense team is going to present to that woman or to that man that is accusing this person of sexual assault or rape. So it's a lot of mental wear and tear, physical wear and tear on these people. And let's give them the benefit of the doubt. And let's not just say that these people are making up stories too. And a lot of times, I think a lot more times than not, these stories are validated as well for these people that do bring these accusations to the table of sexual assault and rape.
Tough times, Vito, all around. But in the end, you're saying as a journalist, he had the right to write it. in the end, what he did was present factually what he knew. The question that people are having is how much credibility does it have, the timing, why, and things like that. But in the end, as a journalist, sometimes you have to print things that people don't want to know about. But in the end, I think the tough part was having to wait, the timing of it, not getting comments from the lady, not getting comments from Patricia.
But you know what? They didn't disclose her name because she didn't want her name disclosed. And that's a policy of the news. A lot of news organizations, journalistically ethical and upright organizations, don't like including the name of the accuser in these stories because they want to protect the individuality, right? These names. They don't want to bring these names to the table because then guess what happens to this woman if her name is brought out in this story? Guess what happens to her? If she's on Twitter, she gets death threats, and she gets death threats sent to her home. She gets calls from people that she doesn't want to deal with, calls that are nasty that consist of death threats. So you don't want to dirty this or, put this woman's name into the forefront, bring it into the forefront, because then she has to deal with all of this nasty stuff and possibly, as I said already, death threats. So you're protecting this person as well by not putting her name in this story. And a lot of news organizations, and once again, journalistically ethical and upright organizations, do not put the names of these accusers in these stories because of that fact. And I totally agree with that decision by the news and those other news organizations that do follow that model.
Yeah, it's just when I read it, I was like, wow, the vitriol that was released. It's just, and also too, do you take into account, like I know they teach you in journalism that you're supposed to kind of not do PR, you're not supposed to write things that people want to always know about, but is there understanding that, look, if you know going into it, maybe if we sat around and said, look, it's not going to be popular, it's not going to be received well, we might even lose subscribers. Let's just say that me and you were talking, and I'm the editor of the Free Press, and I'm talking to you, and you're like, I have this story, I got this information, and I'm like, man, Vito, there's a chance this could get nasty. There's a chance, business-wise, we could lose subscribers. We could lose people that say, we don't want your coverage. You could have the Lions then enact policies to not have the news do things, and you say to yourself, well, is this worth it to publish it knowing that, potentially speaking, 70% of people aren't going to like it anyway? Is it something to talk about? Is it valid to address the popularity of what someone's going to write? Because you have a colleague that's pretty out there and controversial that you work with, and he's just continuing to go along, plug along, saying things that sometimes some people are considering outrageous, but when you read the comments under it, it's pretty vile and nasty as well. So you work with people like that, and you say to yourself, okay, if you continue to do that, do you think even though Robert got the information, journalistically it was good, do you also see value in the negatives as to what could be a fallout from publishing something like this?
Well, what Carlos Monterrez, you're bringing him up, I know without mentioning his name, I guess I just did, so there you go. But anyways, like what he does, his columns and whatnot, he's negative and negative Nelly, but this is different. This is not just a column. This is a factual-based story, where Robert Snell did his fact-checking, vetted his sources. So this is different. And if you're an editor of a newspaper, of a magazine, print publication, digital media publication, and you're worried about losing subscribers for printing something that's controversial, such as this that has facts, so is fact-based, guess what? Then you lost your journalistic sense. Your journalistic integrity is gone as an editor. If you tell your reporter that comes to the table with these fact-based, evidence points, throughout the story, something that he or she can say did happen, I've dug it up properly, journalistically, and then you as the editor tell this reporter not to give, us the story, not to give me the story, and that, hey, we're not going to run with this story after that reporter did all that digging up of facts once again, vetting of sources. Well, guess what then? If you're the editor, once again, I really do believe that you've lost your journalistic sense and you no longer are truly journalistically ethical. And once again, what we do as a podcast network is different than what a newspaper does or other news organizations do. Those news organizations have a right to, if there is a story to report that is based on facts, no matter the time, no matter the situation, you have to report it. I think you have to. If you can present the facts journalistically, ethically. So if you can, then I think you have the right to run the story, no matter whether or not, going into it, once you publish the story, that you will lose some subscribers, that there will be some naysayers, some guys that maybe no longer want to read your publication. Guess what? That's bound to happen. It's going to happen. You have to deal with it. Those are the repercussions you have to deal with, and you have to suck it up because you know that at the end of the day, you're doing your duty as a news organization to report the facts. And these facts from this story, Robert Snell, once again, dug up. We have to believe, I believe that he did. Therefore, the news had all the right in the world to report this story, to run with the story, despite the fact that it knew going into, I really do believe that it knew going into it, that guess what? On Twitter and just from afar, all over, the Michigan landscape, national landscape, there was going to be some people that didn't like this reporting and thought that maybe it wasn't the right time for it. But then I asked, okay, so when was the right time for it? It happened. He's reporting something that happened. So there was an incident. He had the right to report it. And I don't think the timing is bad. I don't think it's a smear campaign against the Lions or that the news has any agenda against the Lions once again. And that it's moving forward with its agenda to really make the Lions look bad, to dirty Matt Patricia's name and the Lions organization's name. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it has everything to do with reporting something that did happen. And as an organization that really prides itself on being journalistically ethical, I think it had all the right in the world once again to run with the story.
Okay, so it's something that is talked about, but in the end, it should be published.
As an editor, I think if you're telling your reporter not to give me the story, that we're not going to run this story, then you no longer should be the editor of that newspaper, of that magazine, of whatever print publication or online publication that you had as editor. I think you have no right in the world to any longer be the editor of that publication, of that organization, because you no longer really have any journalistic sense, in my opinion. If you're telling your reporter that we can't run this story now, after you did all that digging up, all the vetting of the sources that you attained for this story, and you're going to tell him or her that you can't run with the story, it doesn't look good for the editor, and I think that editor should resign and move on to something else, Doc.
Okay, so it's something that is worthwhile, it is newsworthy, but in the end, what your job as a newspaper is to do is present the information and let the viewer decide.
Yes.
And that's
if
what
he
it's
or she
supposed to be.
doesn't like the story, don't read the story. Or you start reading it, you don't like it, stop reading the story then, and move on with the rest of your life. Because the news has a right to report this story, so I'm glad it did.
Okay, let's take our first time out. It is a situation for the Detroit Lions that is going to continue to play out. The Detroit Lions and hopefully Matt Patricia are being honest and truthful. There is further discussion to be had regarding who knew what when and when the information was released, how much forthcoming should an individual be with it. But in the world of big business, big money, you know if you're making millions of dollars per season and you're the head of an organization like a football team or an athletic venture, something like this probably should have been released and talked about.
This should not have happened where the news broke the story about this incident.
And I do
the
think,
Lions should have known.
And I do want to say that I think people need to kind of open their mind a little bit, be more open-minded to hear the other side of things, be willing to gather as much information. Don't fully believe Matt Patricia, but don't fully believe the woman as well. Understand that there's more information to be released, and understand that you got to decide as an individual listening to this, how much do you trust Matt Patricia? How much do you care regarding somebody's past? And do you believe somebody? Do you give someone the benefit of the doubt in 2018? Because there are people who can speculate, like you did earlier on, that there may be something nefarious that went on. And then how do you then relay that and think your way through that, knowing this man's on the sideline?
Well, you don't believe anything at face value from Matt Patricia. I don't believe anything at face value from anybody, at this time, in this day and age. And I don't think you should. I think as human beings, you have the right to question everything that's coming out of somebody's mouth. That's why I question you all the time, right? You see me questioning you. You question me because you know what? I think we have the right as human beings to be, curious about whether or not what's coming out of this person's mouth, is it simply BS that they're, bullshit that they are spewing? Or is it truth? Is it valid? I think you have the right to question whether or not what Matt Patricia said, defending himself, saying that the truth is on his side. You have the right to question whether or not he is speaking the truth. I think you can't believe, to sum it all up, you can't believe anybody at face value.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it, Vito. All right, Vito, let's take our first time out. We'll come back. You also got some things to bring to the table. You brought an interview to the table regarding something regarding youth and their involvement in sports. I'm very fascinated to get your take. And who will be the guest this week?
We have John Wangler, who I think, Doc knows. He is the CEO of an organization that I work for in downtown Royal Oak, Top Cat Sales. So he will be along in the second half of this week's episode of Two Bad Hombres.
Vito, I want to tell you about our host site, Podomatic.com. When Adam and I first started this project, we were looking for a great place to host all of our recorded audio. Thank goodness we found Podomatic. Why do we use them? When we book great guests like Jim Leland, maybe future podcasters that want to come on and promote their stuff, we got to give great quality links. And you can't give links that are going to break, freeze, or don't work. Then you will never grow your network. That's how we've been able to grow. That's how Vito won an Emmy. Because of the fact that we have great podcasts, great verbal debates, great entertaining content, and we upload all that audio to Podomatic.com. So if you're looking to start a brand new project and you want to reach the level of success as Vito, you want to be the highest paid podcaster in Michigan like Vito, we're going to recommend one host site. All the hosts here are going to recommend Podomatic.com.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah.
We Dumb Boys. Oh, I love that right there. A little bumper music from We Dumb Boys. Now, I think if you really want to be dumb boys today when it comes to athletics and being an athlete, I think you should participate in more than one sport. You know what? Specializing in one sport growing up really wastes your muscles. You don't develop all your muscles that you could and should growing up, as you will get better, bigger and better in like one single sport maybe. But playing the multiple sports growing up is kind of an essential. And I've talked to more and more coaches about this. I've polled them kind of, and they've told me too numerous times that, you know what, they really believe that you should not just play one sport growing up, Doc. What do you think about that topic, which is really a nationwide and worldwide topic at this point too?
Yeah, so how did this come to be? How did this topic kind of flourish? And our parents kind of deciding because, you know what, kids are kind of maybe overdoing it, maybe sometimes where there's a balance of maybe trying to decide should a kid be in multiple sports or if he's really good at one. For me personally, I just think that if a kid wants to play multiple sports, let him do it. I think that it's up to the kid. But if a kid does show talent or excel in one, here's probably the caveat and the troublesome aspects of what we're talking about. Most parents will believe that, look, if your kid shows skill in baseball, then he should just focus all his time on baseball and things like that. But I think every case is different. I don't want to universally make a statement, but I do think that if a kid is passionate and wants to focus singularly on one, then that's where the focus should be. What the kid wants, not just to make them hate the sport or overdo it. I think everything should be decided as a family, should be discussed. And I do think that sometimes, like my nephew, he loves baseball. He doesn't want to play soccer.
Well, he's a baseball prodigy. We got a different story right there.
I don't think he's a prodigy, but I think he does have himself some talent, and he's definitely a kid that loves baseball. He actually has a board downstairs that has stats. He knows the RBI leaders, stat leaders. He's going there, erasing it, putting it up every single week. Good kid, loves baseball. But you don't want to ruin that. You don't want to ruin that joy. And I can understand where people will say, no, let them play more if they want. Let them do it. Let's listen to John Wangler, and let's get his thoughts on playing one sport versus expanding your horizons and doing other things.
Here is the man, John Wangler. Vito Churko here with former U of M Rose Bowl winning quarterback and Top Cat Sales CEO, and perhaps better known as Top Cat Sales' fearless leader, John Wangler. John, how are you doing?
Thanks for the generous introduction. I think it's better when you play multiple sports. I think for a couple reasons. I think you get burned out if you do one sport all year round. I think it's been proven that it wears out muscle parts, body parts, if you repetition of the same motion or action. And I just do think when you're playing multiple sports in high school, you're competing at the highest level every time you line up and play a high school sport. When you start getting into AAU or travel this or travel that, there's always another game. There's always multiple games on a weekend. I don't think games mean as much. And I think that's what's happened is games have been minimized because of there's always another game, another weekend, another trophy, another juice box. So in my opinion, you should play at least two sports in high school all the way through. Maybe I'm an old school dinosaur, which I am, but in my opinion, that's it makes you better in your primary sport. When you're competing and you're playing a complementary sport, whether it's track or baseball and football and basketball and football, and I do think a lot of the college coaches now are kind of hoping that you are a multi-sport guy because it's easier to train you when you have the ability to adapt to different situations in different sports, and you've shown that over the course of your career.
So you were a multi-sport athlete. You excelled in both basketball and football at Royal Oak Shrine. How did that help you in going to U of M and getting ready to play football at a major D1 university like the University of Michigan? I
also ran track for 4 years. It wasn't very good, but I felt that helped me, both in football and basketball. And I played baseball 1 year. So I felt that 100% that my ability to play multiple sports, especially I was a point guard in basketball and a quarterback in football, there was a lot of crossover with just vision and being able to see the field and make quick snap judgments. So I think those complement themselves very well. Track helped me with my speed and conditioning. Baseball, obviously your hand-eye coordination and all the attributes that baseball players have. I felt it made me a much more versatile athlete. In fact, Bo actually switched me to defensive back for half of a spring practice because he felt I had the athleticism to compete at that position, play quarterback. I played basketball for 2 years at University of Michigan I'm a JV team, and I thought that was a wonderful experience, and it kind of gave me a break from football in January and February before spring ball started, so it was a nice break. I was still competing and practicing hard, and yet I was, just lifting weights and running around, winter conditioning. So that was a good break for me from football, and I do believe it helped me.
So the trend has been specializing in the one sport, but could you see it shifting back to what it used to be more of, playing multiple sports? Because we just saw in this past year's NFL draft, 29 of the 32 first-round picks were actually multi-sport athletes. So do you think that trend could be shifting back to these kids playing multiple sports much more often, John?
I hope it is, Vito. I'm not sure that it will 100% because there's so much money involved. All these sports want to make their sport year-round. And they know there's money. There's money in travel teams. There's money in hotels and restaurants, and so it's become a huge business. It's more the financial reasons that these things have sprung up. It started more probably like in the hockey and soccer, and it's spread out now to baseball and football and basketball, and I hope these kids are realizing that you don't need to specialize in one sport, right? If you're a good athlete, you can lift weights all year round to varying levels of intensity. You can run and train, all year round, no matter what sports you're doing. All the sports, whether it's baseball, whether it's basketball, have embraced strength training. So now it's not taboo to lift weights during the season. So I think there's no reason that you have to say, I'm just going to be a football player and lift weights and do 7-on-7 and combine testing all year round. You can play other sports and still achieve the goals that you want in your particular sport.
So I think we're both for playing multiple sports. And I think also because of the team bonding and having more fun, being with your buddies and growing up with your buddies and playing with them like throughout high school. I mean, because then you're just doing the one sport, like you said, like with hockey, where you're traveling all year round too, and you're not with your high school friends and your real buddies, I guess, in so many words too, John.
Well, that's a great point, Vito. I was fortunate to go to the same grade school in high school for 12 years, and a lot of the guys I started playing with in grade school, we played together all the way through, and it really made it a special feeling. The IMGs of the world and all these prep schools, I'm not a fan at all. I think playing for your local high school is really the greatest experience. And, when you become a hired gun and you go play at IMG or whatever, and you don't have that same feeling, and I think you lose the true high school experience. 90% of the kids are not going to play at the collegiate level out of high school. So that statistic hasn't changed. The amount of scholarships that come out of the state of Michigan every year is the same as it was in 1976 as it is in 2017. So these parents are fooling themselves if they think that they have to go down to IMG or any of these prep schools to have their kids noticed. And I think it's done a disservice to high school sports. And was it last year or 2 years ago, our three top basketball players from our state, none of them finished high school in the state of Michigan, and they're all first-round draft picks. Now, you could argue, they got better competition. I don't believe all that. They were going to be first-round picks regardless. They were going to be great college players. Let the kids have a true high school experience and let them experience playing with the kids they grew up with and their neighborhood kids. Some of the schools have kids from all over. That's fine, but it's still a high school experience where you have cheerleaders, you have a prom, you have homecoming, you have all that stuff. And you don't have that same deal at these other schools. And, and again, it's money, right? People are paying these kids, and it's diluted the talent. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, you didn't have to go any further than your neighborhood park, and you have as much talent as they have down at these AU tournaments and more. But, it's a different world. I know how things have changed, but I think it's not changing in the right direction as far as that kind of stuff goes.
Well, I'll leave it with this. Play multiple sports, get the full-fledged high school experience, and focus on your teams and academics in high school. And people kind of forget about the academics too, John.
Well, that's the most important thing. If the parents spent or saved the money that they spent carting their kids all over the country to play on AAU tournaments for 3 or 4 or 5 years, they'd have their college kids' education paid for. The other thing that I think that I don't like is freshman eligibility in college. I don't like kids graduating at half year and going into college in January. I think it's doing them a disservice. They think they're going to get a jump on it. Maybe some of them do. I'm playing college football. Let the kids finish high school, be a high school student, be a normal student. You're going to have 4 or 5 years to play in college. You do not have to play as a freshman. Now, that rule will never be changed because of basketball and all the other reasons that they think that they have to have freshman eligibility. But let the kids go, get acclimated to college, be a student athlete, okay, learn the ropes, and then you'll have 3 years if you turn pro early. You'll have 4 years or 5 years to play and enjoy college. But everybody's rushing everything, and I don't think it's positive. I really don't. But that's just me, and those things probably won't change. But hopefully you can enjoy your high school experience. It's one of the greatest experiences you'll ever have, and it's the experience that 90% of the kids will be their last experience in organized sports. So enjoy that. Don't rush it. And if you're lucky enough to play after high school, then that's great, and it'll be a wonderful experience, but don't rush that to get there.
And that has been John Wangler telling it like it is. John, thank you much for the time. Great talk.
Thank you, Vito. Always here to help boost your ratings out here in the media world.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks once again.
Vito, very interesting stuff. Former Michigan QB gave us some insights regarding why he thought playing a multitude of sports. And I think he had a fair point in that, exposing kids to different things lets them also grow in a different way, lets them use different muscles, lets them experience different teammates with different skills. And so there's value in that. And so I do think those parents that sometimes maybe deny their kids the opportunity, that's where the issue may lie and things like that. I welcome that opinion, and thank you for bringing him to the table.
Well, then it feels like, too, you can get burnt out easily, too, growing up playing the same sport all year round, travel hockey, let's say. And I bring up that because my cousin played travel hockey growing up. Eventually, he got burnt out because he played it all year round. Then there's the cost, the ice time, all of that added up. And then if your kid maybe doesn't enjoy it or isn't really that good, and especially doesn't enjoy it, well, why are you going to force him to play that one sport without his grade school, middle school, high school buddies playing travel for, an AAU team? It's called like midget level hockey, one of those developmental hockey teams, younger hockey teams, all year round, all that travel time, travel costs, ice time and ice expenses. And then your kid doesn't really even enjoy it. He's missing out on fun with his buddies and on really developing friendships, right? Bonding opportunities and developing like high school team chemistry. And those are your buddies that you remain with more than likely the rest of your life in high school too. And then you're gonna miss out on all of that fun, maybe on senior prom, on prom, moving into your senior year, all of those different dances, events. I mean, I didn't do the dances either, so I can't really be hypocritical here and say that, these kids are missing out on dances. But, there are kids that want to do their homecoming, want to do their prom, especially senior year. Then when you're traveling, you might not be able to because of this or that. I mean, there's travel hockey going on even like in April and May when there is senior prom. So going on when it's warmer out, I know the NHL playoffs are, but really that level of hockey going on year-round, you're traveling like to Boston all the way from Michigan or all the way from California to Boston, California to Michigan in the middle of the school year too, and you're missing out on an ample amount of opportunities with your friends on academics. How about that? That's like lost in the equation, Doc. How about school? You get behind on your schoolwork, your grades suffer as a result of that. And look at these kids are missing out academically. And I think also when it comes to socializing, socially too, missing out on time with their friends that I think you should be spending with your friends when you're in middle school, when you go into high school, when you're in high school, because you know what? You're not going to really have those friendships the rest of your life because as you and I both know, college is different than high school too. It really is when it comes to making friends, sustaining friendships. Your friends in high school might be the ones that you carry on with you that last for you the rest of your life. And when you're traveling for one single sport all year round, focusing on that and, devoting all your time to that all year round, guess what? You're missing out on an ample amount of opportunities with your friends and maybe playing something else, another sport or engaging in another activity that maybe you would enjoy too, that you wouldn't even know and you won't find out that you do enjoy because of the fact that you are focusing and devoting all of your time and attention on that one sport.
Very solid, Vito. Enjoyed the conversation. Thanks to John Wangler. Top Cat Sales, always great support from them for the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Great podcast recording. I hope this Matt Patricia story kind of does lean toward the positive, but at least we're engaging in realistic dialogue. We're not letting our emotions run wild. We're not calling for him to be fired, but we're not 100% in support of him either because there is a small chance that, that sometimes some people can look you right in the face and both-face lie, and some people could do that. And I hope, though, that this is not something that's going to be a ticking time bomb that is just put behind him. That's the case. Legally, he's innocent, and you hope that he's being honest, truthful, and forthright, and you just got to hope that the Detroit Lions, they got to realize that that's not probably the way you want to handle an acquisition of a talent. You want to do your due diligence, because you have to state the fact. If a journalist found it, an organization like the Lions, a $2 billion franchise, has to have the means to go out there and dig and at least be aware some way about what you're hiring and things like that. And just obviously the facts of the matter are Rod Wood and the Lions did not do the best of job. Bob Quinn, Rod Wood, Martha Ford, they were not 100% in the know. When a journalist who works outside your building knows more than you have a problem. You got to look at it.
And it's really an indictment on the Lions organization that they did not do their due diligence. And you know what? They can't poo-poo this the rest of the way. And the NFL is investigating this. It will find out something. If there is something to find out, the NFL will find out something. Will dirty the Lions' name. It will maybe cost Matt Patricia his job. But like you said, neither of us are calling for his job right now, and nobody should be calling for his job right now either.
Let's see how this plays out, Vito. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Two Bad Hombres. You can listen to this podcast every single Saturday, Detroit Sports Podcast Network, and definitely check out Vito's Tigers Talk podcast. It drops every single Wednesday. Vito's doing great work covering baseball every single Wednesday, off-season, during the season. Great stuff, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Visit him at Vito Jerome. Visit the network at Detroit Podcast.
Jim Leland's even been a guest now in Tigers Talk. We can say that much, too. Adios.
Spin.